Welcome to Rome and the Empire 2, 180 to 476 AD. This is Melinda Cole Klein. The Roman Empire until 180 AD is heralded as a time of peace, expansionism, and prosperity, enjoyed across the far reaches of the empire, including Britain, Spain, North Africa, and beyond. Technology, building, and large waterworks projects spread Roman ideas and politics. By 180 AD, there starts a century of civil war because no one man can control the army. The true political power of the Roman Empire. In one 35-year period alone, there were 37 emperors who challenged each other for possession of the throne. They were violent and deadly in their attempts to control and possess power. This changed when Diocletian, a new emperor, came along in 284 AD. He gave Rome 21 years of peace, and this allowed the government and empire to recover. Diocletian, as observed by historians, saved the Roman Empire. By 305, Diocletian retires, and this was a rare thing as consul or as emperor, at which time there was a brief civil war. However, peace was maintained by Constantine. After Diocletian retired in 305 AD, several men would fight each other for political control. In 312, there was a final war to end all battles, and the question of succession was finally settled. The night before the battle, Constantine, of whom wanted victory, was spending time with his men talking about the future. They spent hours staring at the night sky. Afterwards, Constantine slept. As the story goes, in his dreams, Constantine was visited by Jesus Christ, who explained Christianity was for him. He told Constantine that if he would wear on his battle flags, banners, and shield the sign of the cross and put his faith in the one true God, he would win the battle the following day. And yes, as you might expect, Constantine instructed his men the following day to do just what he envisioned. Constantine's army won the battle. The next year, Constantine in 313 ordered a new law called the Milan Edict. This law had several effects. First of all, there was religious tolerance. Secondly, it allowed Christianity to spread and could be worshipped freely without fear or actuality of persecution. By 391 AD, Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire. The religious system established by the Roman Empire was not only practical, but it stood as a collection of different and varying beliefs, study of astronomy, along with forbidden acts or taboos and superstitions that had been, over the centuries, consolidated into practices. Historically, at least in part, the religious structure of Rome was inherited from the traditions of Greek civilization that was much admired. To the Romans, organized religion was not so much a spiritual connection to the divine, and more of a connection to the natural laws of the universe, which had control over people's well-being and daily lives. Most of the Roman gods and goddesses were a blend of several religious influences, especially Greek and early Latin tribes. Most forms of religious activity required some kind of sacrifice, and prayer could be a confusing matter due to some gods having multiple names or their sects even being unknown. So Roman religion was confusing for some and others over time. Since Christianity began to take shape as a religion that operated within the Roman Empire, authorities hesitated for a long time on how to deal with this population and their new cult. Christians, because their allegiance was to a deity first and not as citizens of Rome, the authorities believed that over time Christians would undermine their power and their authority. All the while, Jewish religious leaders supported this line of reasoning as well, especially in the early years during the time of Christ. This line of reasoning would ultimately lead to his arrest and his crucifixion. Persecution of Christians began with Nero's bloody repression from 64 AD. This began over a century of violence against Christians that were Roman citizens across the provinces of the empire. Christians were persecuted for their beliefs until 177 AD. Christianity is often portrayed as a religion of the poor and of the slave. This is not necessarily a true picture. From the beginning, there seemed to appear to have been wealthy and influential figures who were at least sympathized with the Christians, even members of the judicial system. It appears that Christianity maintained its appeal to such highly connected persons over a long period of time. A century prior to the fall of the Roman Empire, two brothers serving as joint emperors would rule provinces in the Roman East and West. It seemed across the empire borderlands were being invaded or internal disorder was in effect. In the 360s AD, the Picts in Scotland were on the rampage, while the coastal regions of Gaul, this is present-day France. During his rule of the West, Valentinian would be challenged, it seemed, at every corner. All the while the Saxons were attacking England. This required sending additional Roman troops to Britannia in efforts to retain possession of their province. This new pattern of invasions hit civilian areas north of London and aimed to establish control of London over time. This was the Roman commercial and political center. While his brother's rule in the West would end in 375, his son Gratian would enjoy joint rule while internal and external forces seemed to be never-ending. Valens, some considered to be the last true emperor of Rome, continued his imperial control of provinces in the east for another 3 years, until 378 AD. While rule has been divided in previous years, Theodosius I ruled both the East and West until the mid-390s. But during his reign, Goths had won their war by the early 380s and settled within the Roman Empire south of the Danube. Under Theodosius, Christianity became the official state religion of the empire. This placed the emperor at an advantage to destroy ancient Greek temples to the gods in his personal quest to rid the empire of pagan worship, beliefs, and practices. Honorius was the younger son of Theodosius I. The late Roman Empire would be ruled by joint emperors once again, as Honorius ruled in the west and his brother Arcadius in the east. The reign of Honorius would be long, and it would see significant changes to the empire due to invasions in particular coming from the north of the Danube by the Huns, who in time would make their way across the Alps into Italy and then Rome itself by 409 AD. Barbarians, otherwise known to history as non-Roman peoples, raided towns, villages, and farms in Gaul, Spain, and Italy. This would prompt calling in resident Roman legions, such as from Britain, to return to the continent in order to offer defensive tactics against the raiding Huns. In time, the barbarian Franks, Goths, Ostrogoths, and countless other smaller bands would claim and rule former Roman provinces. Some citizens living in the capital city saw the beginning of the end by the mid-200s. In response, they built a 12-mile defensive wall around Rome. Remnants of the Aurelian walls can be seen in Rome today. These walls took 4 years to build, but it did not secure the city forever. With subsequent invasions, this forced Rome to return to its original function as a polis, and it lost its role as an imperial city. It seems that by 376 AD, there was a population of German barbarians who were now living in Italy all the time. The Ostrogoths and the Visigoths defeated Rome, as they could not by 410 AD be stopped by Roman armies. Thus, by 410 AD, the Visigoths captured Rome, the first time in 800 years since the Etruscans held power. Now foreigners ruled Rome. It would be at this moment in time that a new type of barbarian came from the east. This was the Huns, led by Attila. The empire of the Huns had been consolidated prior to Attila and was final and the most powerful king of the Huns. He reigned over what was then Europe's largest barbarian empire, from 434 until his death. By the 430s, Attila the Hun reigned as king until later on. His empire stretched across northern Europe to Eastern Europe. During his rule, he was the most fearsome of the Western and Eastern Roman Empire enemies. With attacks on Constantinople and Rome, Attila demanded tribute to be paid to him annually in gold. This challenged the already overstretched financial realities of the Roman Empire. For a popular film spin worthwhile viewing, I suggest you watch Attila with Power Brooks, 2003. While it's a Hollywood film, it puts you squarely in the culture of the later Roman Empire and the challenges to their authority by invaders. All the while, it does a good job with its illustration of the characters of General Flavius Activus, who lived with the Huns for a few years as a boy and also as an ally captive, and Emperor Valentinian's sister Honoria also in the film, and her power play for the empire with Attila. For historical accounts, Attila was a ruthless killer and would rather kill you than talk to you. However, by the same accounts, he is recognized as a New Age Roman political player. Attila was a smart politician because he had watched the best imperial practices of how to run an empire through Roman examples. He was a brilliant military strategist and strategically made alliances that were good for the Huns. For example, he negotiated terms of peace and to withdrawal from Italy in negotiations with Pope Leo I and the Emperor Valentinian III. By 476 AD, the Roman Empire ceased to exist. Italy became independent German kingdoms run by Visigoths and later Ostrogoths, who valued Roman and Greek traditions. Barbarians, the Germans and later Vikings and Anglo-Saxon Britons, would adopt Christianity. Former provinces of the Roman Empire that would not adopt Christianity had belonged to ancient Persia in the Near East and Egypt in northern Africa. The exception to this trend was early adoption of Christianity in Ethiopia during the period of Pax Romana. With the absence of Roman rule and reinforcement of traditions, this period began a time when all learning and government stopped. The exception was religion. The Church of Rome continued to practice its rituals and form ties and alliances with the new Germanic leaders. In time, Germanic leaders and their people adopted Christianity across the West, giving Europe the geographical term Christendom. In looking several centuries ahead in regards to Christianity after the fall of the Roman Empire, by 1054 the Church of Rome split. As the Western Roman Empire lacked its political and governmental authority, the opposite was the case in the East. After the fall of Rome, the Eastern Roman Empire survived for another 1,000 years as the Byzantine Empire. After 1054, the Eastern Christian Church in Constantinople officially became the Greek Orthodox Church after fundamental ideological differences between the Greek Christians in the East and the European Christian authority headed by the Vatican. This action created two forms of Christianity. It allowed Eastern priests independence from Roman authority. By the 1530s, the Church of Rome would split yet again. The Reform movement led by Martin Luther targeted the system of indulgences as a corruption or form of corruption. And he would argue that church fathers should follow in his lead to discourage the system of indulgences and other such corruptions. Martin Luther advocated these principles in his sermons, lectures, and writing. But reform was not the path of this history. This is not what happened. Because of the popularity of the writings and lectures given by Martin Luther, thousands of people joined in his cause to protest these practices. These Christians who separated from the Church of Rome became known to history as Protestant Christians. Since this 16th century event, there are now three Christian faiths. The political, social, and economic practices continued by the Catholic Church are remembered as the collective spirit, sometimes called the ghost of Rome. While in the West, the imperial government and empire collapsed, its religious structure survived. In time, it filled governmental voids. Catholic priests across Europe would create ecclesiastical courts to which justice was served. Additionally, the monastic movement spread Christian beliefs and was the great civilizing force that would unite, in time, Europe as a civilization.